They didn't kill me. They buried me. Not with bullets, not with blades, with silence, with lies, with betrayal dressed in smiles. They lowered me into that grave with gentle hands, as if they cared, as if they mourned the very death they orchestrated. I saw the dirt fall in slow motion, each grain a memory, each shovel a goodbye they never had to say. And the world kept moving. No funerals for the forgotten, no tears for the inconvenient, just a hole in the ground and the weight of abandonment pressing on my chest like stone. That was my rebirth, because in the beginning I screamed. I begged for the ones I once bled for. I reached for the hands that swore they'd never let go. I cried with the voice of a man who still believed that loyalty meant something. But the soil doesn't care. The grave doesn't echo back apologies. It only listens. And it buries. Time loses all meaning when you're trapped in the dark. A minute becomes an hour becomes eternity. You stop counting days, because what does a day matter when no one remembers your name? I was not sleeping. I was suffocating. Each breath shallow. Each thought darker than the last. No light. No hope. Just the sound of my own breath. And even that began to fade. That's when the silence became a voice. Not a scream. Not a cry. But a whisper. A whisper that said, "This is not your end." It didn't roar. It didn't comfort. It just existed. Like a spark in frozen ash.
Do you know what happens when light becomes a memory? You start to question if it ever existed. You start to wonder, was I ever loved? Was I ever chosen? Or was I just a placeholder in someone else's story? The darkness doesn't scream. It suffocates slowly, like a hand around your throat, but gentle enough to make you believe you're still breathing. I used to believe in people, used to trust their words, their promises, their smiles. But smiles hide knives, and words are just lullabies for fools. They said they'd stand with me. They said they'd never leave. They said they'd fight beside me. But when the sky fell, they were the ones holding the hammer. I wasn't defeated by enemies.
I was destroyed by those who called me brother, lover, friend. They didn't raise weapons. They raised doubts, whispers in corridors, looks that lingered too long, lies wrapped in concern. They watched me crumble, and they helped bury the pieces. That kind of betrayal, it doesn't just hurt. It rewrites your soul, takes everything soft inside of you, and burns it with cold fire. And in that silence, in that grave of isolation, I met someone. Not a person, not a voice. I met the version of me that had been silent all my life. The one who never cried. The one who never begged. The one who didn't need validation to breathe. He looked at me with eyes carved from ash and said, "Finally, you see." Because I had to be emptied. I had to be erased. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the fall. It wasn't even the silence that followed. It was the breathing. The shallow, suffocating struggle to keep drawing air through lungs that no longer believed they deserved it. That's where it starts. That's where most give up. Not in pain, but in exhaustion. The body wants to stop. The mind starts whispering, maybe this is mercy. But I refused. Not out of hope. Hope died with the last handful of dirt. I refused out of spite. Because every breath I took was one more they didn't want me to have. They thought the darkness would choke me. Instead, I learned to inhale it, to swallow it whole, to make it mine. Every grain of dirt in my mouth was a lesson. Every second without air was a teacher. And slowly, I began to adapt. I stopped begging for rescue. Stopped calling names that were never real. I went quiet. Not out of defeat. Out of transformation. Because silence is not surrender. It's sharpening. Sharpening every breath until it cuts like a blade. Sharpening every heartbeat into a war drum in the shadows. I built new lungs. Lungs that could breathe grief. Lungs that could process rage. Lungs that didn't need permission to keep going. They buried me to forget me, to erase the memory of my voice. So I made sure my silence became louder than their lies. I was no longer trying to be found. I was preparing to return unrecognizable. Not as the man they betrayed, but as the force they'll regret summoning. I didn't crawl out of that grave for applause. I rose for vengeance, for redefinition, for the version of me that would. They didn't just bury me, they built me. Not with intention, but with neglect, with betrayal, with silence so thick it hardened into bone. I was not born a monster. I was molded into one, in the dark, in the dirt, beneath the weight of every lie I ever believed. You want to know the truth? They weren't afraid of who I was. They were afraid of who I could become if I ever stopped needing them. So they tried to kill that part of me, the part that questioned, the part that burned, the part that didn't kneel. But monsters aren't born in sunlight. They're born beneath it, in graves, in silence, in betrayal buried so deep you start to taste it in your blood. At first I resisted it. I tried to hold on to who I was. The good man, the loyal friend, the silent warrior waiting for permission to be seen. But the grave doesn't allow goodness to survive. It forces you to evolve or rot. So I let go. I let go of the softness. I let go of the need to be loved. I let go of the illusion that loyalty meant anything to people who never had it in their bones. And in that letting go, I became something else. Not angry, not broken, not lost. Weaponized. I stopped crying. I started listening to the voice inside that didn't beg, didn't ask, didn't flinch. It spoke in blood. It whispered in vengeance. It smiled in the mirror while everything around me burned. They created a villain because they were too cowardly to face the king I was becoming. And now, that villain wears a crown of ash and walks through fire like it's air. I don't want peace. They thought the dirt was enough. They thought silence would finish what betrayal began. They thought if they buried me deep enough, I'd vanish. But I am not a seed. I don't bloom. I detonate. You buried a storm, and storms don't sleep. Claw by claw I rose, not with grace, not with poetry, with rage. Fingernails torn, knuckles split, teeth gritted against stone. I didn't rise to be seen. I rose because I refused to die on anyone else's terms. The grave couldn't hold me because it didn't understand what it tried to contain. I am not a memory. I am not a ghost. I am a reckoning. Each handful of dirt I moved was a declaration. Each inch closer to the surface was a funeral for my former self. The man they buried, he's gone. Dead in the soil they thought would trap me. What emerged wasn't him. It was the weapon he became. You don't bury fire and expect silence. You don't suffocate fury and expect peace. You don't betray loyalty and expect mercy. And now I breathe again. But it's not air that fills these lungs.
It's war. The sky above me has changed. It doesn't shine. It waits. Because even the heavens know something ancient walks again. I carry the silence like a blade, the darkness like armor, the betrayal like a crown. I don't walk like I used to. I march. Because once you rise from your own grave, no one can ever bury you again. Let them hear the footsteps. Let them feel the shift in the wind. Let them taste the dust I bring with me. The grave was never my end. It was my forge. And now that I'm out, I'm not coming back quietly.
They wanted silence. They'll get screams. They wanted peace. They'll get a war carved in fire. Because I remember. I remember every eye that looked away. Every mouth that stayed shut. Every hand that released mine when I needed it most. And now, I walk through the world not as a man, but as memory's wrath. You should have killed me when you had the chance, but you wanted to watch me fade. You wanted me broken, crawling, forgotten. Now I rise, and you call it vengeance? Number. This is justice, in its rawest, blood-stained form. You buried me with your secrets. I rose with your shame. You used my name like it was disposable. Now it's carved into your nightmares. I don't come to negotiate. I don't come to forgive. I come with scars glowing like war paint, and eyes that have seen the pit and chosen to climb out with teeth bared. Let them whisper that I changed. Let them say I became cold, cruel, ruthless. They're right. You can't crawl out of your own grave and return as the man they remember. You rise as the reversal of everything that buried you. I don't want apologies. I want remembrance. I want you to feel my presence the way you felt relief when I disappeared. Except now, there's no relief, only reckoning. Every name I buried is now a blade in my hand. Every smile that hid a dagger is a scar on my knuckles. You taught me that love has limits, that loyalty has expiration dates, that silence is a sentence. Now I teach you what happens when the forgotten return with nothing left to lose. I don't need to shout. My existence is loud enough. I don't need to strike first. You'll cut yourselves trying to understand. I rose without applause. I stood without witnesses. No one celebrated. No one cared. But that's what makes this moment divine. Because they needed a stage. I needed only a grave. They crowned themselves in comfort, in popularity, in stolen light. But I carved my crown in shadow, in silence, in survival. There is no throne they can build that wasn't first forged in pain. No empire worth ruling that didn't first try to bury me beneath it. Now they look up, and I look down. Not in spite, in truth. Because the climb changes you. The darkness rewires you. And by the time you rise, you're no longer asking for power. You are power. I no longer chase validation. I command reverence. Not from titles. Not from gold. But from the fire behind my silence. You see, anyone can be crowned by men who applaud. But only the broken can be crowned by pain. I don't need their approval. I don't need their forgiveness. Their fear is enough. Their regret is fuel. They sat in circles of comfort while I lay in pits of punishment. But now I walk through their fortresses and feel nothing. Because once you've conquered your own grave, no castle intimidates you. Once you've buried your own name and risen nameless, you don't seek fame. You become legend. And legends don't ask permission. I walk like silence sharpened. I speak like prophecy fulfilled. Every scar, a chapter. Every glare, a reminder. Every step, a drumbeat. I used to beg for sound, any sound. A voice, a whisper, a name. But now, I am the silence. And this silence is not peace. It is prophecy. Because the loud ones are noticed, the quiet ones are remembered. I never raised my voice. You just turned your back too soon. You thought silence meant weakness. You were wrong. Silence is the forge of monsters, the womb of kings, the beginning of the end. And me? I was the silence you buried, the echo you ignored, the breath you thought would fade. Now I move through shadows with no chains, no need, no mercy. Let them fear the loud ones. Let them fear the loud lies, the screaming threats, the flashy enemies. But the real danger is the one who said nothing and still came back to burn the world. Because silence doesn't mean surrender. It means someone is listening, learning, becoming. And I became everything you should have ended when you had the chance.
But you hesitated. You doubted. You laughed. And now you listen. Not because I scream, but because my silence commands you. So when they ask what happened, when they ask why you flinch at shadows, why you whisper my name with trembling lips, tell them this: you feared the wrong noise. You feared anger. You feared chaos. You feared war. But what you should have feared was the man you buried in silence, who came back without a sound and built a kingdom from your grave. They buried me in silence.